In the brief instant before the transition between Entropy and Extus, I was hoping that I would get Godzilla and Anguirus back as his board appeared. I saw that my wish was half granted. I had Godzilla back, but no Anguirus. I would have preferred both, but despite Anguirus' neat abilities, I would have chosen Godzilla if I had to pick between the two. Extus had two different colored temples, white and pink, a pyramid which looked like some modern buildings, and two other icons I couldn't figure out at the time. The new bosses were Kumonga, Gorosaurus, and Nath Ghidorah, whom I was dreading to see, let alone fight. With Godzilla back, I was excited again and eager to explore, yet still cautious. I went to the quiz level first, just as before. This time, Face's questions were more random than ever. Do elephants breathe? Yes. Face's reaction? Weird face number 2. Have you ever been molested by a family member? No. Face's reaction? Weird face number 6. Have you ever raped anyone? No. Face's reaction? Weird face number 8. Is green your favorite color? No. Face's reaction? Weird face number 10. Is the computer the pinnacle of modern technology? Yes. Face's reaction? Weird face number 4. Are you a tough guy? Yes. Face's reaction? Weird face number 12. Can you fly? No. Face's reaction? Weird face number 9. Can you stand on your head? Yes. Face's reaction? Weird face number 7. Do you hate raccoons? No. Face's reaction? Confused. Do you feel blame? No. Face's reaction? Weird face number 11. Would you like a new monster? Yes. Face's reaction? Surprised. Will you miss me? Yes. Face's reaction? Sad. I was happy that I was getting a new monster, but that last question bothered me. Will you miss me? Is Face referring to when I finished the game? I thought. Since the revelation of the game's truly otherworldly nature, I wasn't sure what to think of Face, or anything else in this game, but something about that last statement gave me a genuine feeling of sadness from Face. As I was thinking about this, the game had gone back to the board. I had a new monster, but I had no idea who it was supposed to be. The sprite had a slight resemblance to Rodan, but the head was totally off. I moved this mysterious newcomer to the white temple icon and started the level. When I first started the level, this screen appeared with the text, "Find the gem," presumably instructions for beating this level. After that, I got my first look at my new playable monster, a hairy, dark blue creature with bat-like wings and a skull-like face named Solomon. And I also found that my path was blocked by a beam of light in a small pillar with a plate on it. I figured that the beam of light was blocking the exit, so I had to find the gem and drop it on the plate to deactivate the beam. How exactly I was going to do that, I didn't know. There wasn't anything in the original game requiring you to find an item to beat a level. I'd have to find out when I obtained the gem. The only direction I had to go was left, so on I proceeded. Solomon was a very interesting monster, to say the least. He's capable of both flight and a heat beam, both of which proved to be very useful. He also used to kick and slash with his wings, but he couldn't duck. The White Temple's music was a vocalizing choir, or a video game approximation of such. It's hard to describe, but it had a very holy sound to it. It wasn't long before I started running into waves of strange new enemies. They didn't stop me. I ran past them, slashing, and didn't take any damage. There was a pause between each wave of enemies. After you had killed about 10, there wouldn't be any for about a minute. But then the next wave would appear after 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, I noticed holes in the floor and in the ceiling. Guillotine-mouthed creatures were rapidly flying up and down these crevices, so I had to time my jumps carefully because I didn't know if I'd get another shot at this. Luckily, I managed to get through without a scratch. I guess I'm just lucky. After that, I found myself at the end of the hallway, facing some sort of mini-boss creature. It moved fast and it had some kind of projectile that it shot in 4 directions, but I killed it quite easily using Solomon's heat beam. When the battle was over, I had my gem, which was inside of the creature's head. I found that I could pick up and hold the gem by walking over to it and holding down B. I made the long trek back to the start, deposited the gem on the plate, which deactivated the beam. I left the stage and was shown what was probably the strangest quirk relating to the Solomon monster. Every time you complete a stage or defeat a boss with Solomon, this screen appears. I have no idea what "still the best" 1973 means. Neither the date nor the phrase has any meaning or significance to me that I can think of, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. The next level I played was one I call Bronze Pyramids. I used Godzilla and found he had been leveled up to 12 since I last played as him in Dementia. The Bronze Pyramids were fairly normal as far as levels go, but the visuals were quite interesting, almost unusually colorful and lively. The music had a fittingly Egyptian style to it. It was slow and mysterious sounding. I strode through the level fighting off various enemies. None were too difficult, although the ants could be a pain if you ran into them too many at once. My favorite enemy was the giant reptile I encountered halfway in. At the end of the level, I came to a giant pyramid and engaged it in yet another mini-boss fight. Although this one was a bit different because I had to fight 2 of these monsters at the same time. Individually, I could have dealt with them easily, but fighting them both at once was challenging. But I sped things up by tricking one of the twin beasts into barbecuing his brother by jumping when he used his flame breath. After defeating the twin monsters, I noticed something strange after returning to the board. I was now able to move my monster piece anywhere on the board without limits. Normally Godzilla could only move 3 spaces each turn, and Mothra could move 5. I wanted to try out Solomon some more, so I moved his piece over to the brown pillar-looking icons with the colored dots and started the level. When I got to the level, I realized it was the level icon represented totem poles. I was greeted by 2 of them right at the beginning. The music had a Native American sound to it. It seemed to be using the same instruments as the Entropy Forest. It was noticeably different, but just as foreboding. I walked around for 3 minutes with nothing else besides the totem poles. I didn't realize it until then, but I wasn't expecting another level with nothing alive in it, after all the activity and entropy. Walking by all those multicolored faces, this unnerving level makes me feel like I'm being watched. Only about 10 minutes after I started Extus, I was already halfway through. After getting back from the totem pole level, I tried out one of the TV screens to see how strange they were this time. Even more strange than before. Apparently the music from this was the Uranus theme. I switched back to Godzilla to play another level. Unless this level was quite a surprise. It was a normal level. The colors were gloomy, but even still was quite a shock. This was the kind of level I would expect to see in a Godzilla game, and I was quite mad that I didn't get to play it earlier. The music was the Earth theme. I found it strange that a level fitting a Godzilla game would show up this late, but there's no point in crying over spilled milk, I suppose. I moved Solomon over to the grayish-green icon, which turned out to be a giant high-tech laboratory of some sort. Lots of mechanical drones in this level, but Solomon cleared through them just like he did in the White Temple enemies. The music was gritty, industrial beat. There was also a strange flying cyborg enemy, which was annoying because it would fly away when you jumped to attack it. Also of interest were these large stasis tanks, holding some kind of monster inside. As you would guess, sometimes the monsters awaken and shatter through the glass. I tried to get past stasis tanks as soon as possible, because the monsters inside proved to be vicious little bastards upon release. At the end of this level was an elevator, which I used to go down to the bottom level, where the exit was. Along the way, I was shot by security drones. I couldn't leave the elevator, so my only defense was the heat beam. The last level in this simple thing is something I call the Heart Temple, for obvious reasons. Nothing but a big hallway filled with floating enemies shaped like human hearts. They're incapable of causing you damage, so what you do is you run through levels, smashing as many as you can, so you can get all the power-ups. One run through these levels will get the life meter back to full, and I was greatly appreciative of these levels later. The Heart Temple's music reminded me of a circus tune. It had an overly cheerful sound to it, which gave the level a really weird feeling to it. Having seen all these level types, I chose to fight Gorosaurus with Solomon. The music for this fight was Godzor's theme. It was during the fight that I realized Solomon is far overpowered. A single well-aimed slash could take down as many as 4 of the enemy's life bars. Due to this, the fight was over quickly. Gorosaurus had no projectile attacks or anything else that could match Solomon's deadly claws. But I kept the fight going just long enough to see if Gorosaurus would do his iconic kangaroo kick. I was greatly pleased when he did. Even though I knew Solomon was my fighting ace, I used Godzilla to battle Kumonga just for variety. I briefly considered using Mothra, but of course Godzilla won out. Kumonga was also a simple opponent, no heat beam or anything. He attacks by jumping on you, stabbing you with his mandibles, and also using a signature webbing stream to paralyze you. Once you get webbed, Kumonga will sometimes take the opportunity to attack, but it's mostly a way to buy some time, like Godzilla backing you into a corner until the time runs out. His music was Hedorah's theme. With Gorosaurus and Kumonga defeated, I was at the end of Extus. Before I fought Nakador, there was something I had to do. I wasn't expecting much from it, but for documentation's sake, I took a look at the other TV screen. This is what it was. I don't think there ever was much reason behind the TV screens. If I were to guess, I'd say it's something random. Uncontrolled manifestation of the cartridge's abilities, or maybe all this makes perfect sense to the game. Who knows? Anyways, Mr. Fawcett's theme was the Saturn music. It was time for the opponent I had been dreading, not Ghidorah. Although I had gained courage with Solomon's combat advantage, I was still very nervous, and when I started the fight, I was immediately confused. My opponent was not Ghidorah. I defeated the imposter with a few strikes, and then Nachtmageddon appeared. Then it made sense. In order to get to not Ghidorah, I had to battle all the previous replacements first. And battle them I did. I tore my way through until I finally made it to Nakadora, who was a Doran. Once I stopped laughing, I destroyed him with only 2 slashes. Then the music stopped, and I thought I was going back to the board, but the battle wasn't over yet. The real fight was against the Chimera, a monstrous hybrid of all the replacement beasts. This was by far the most difficult boss yet. Every attack would cut down whole life bars per use. While attacks against him were greatly weakened, Solomon's Slash, for example, was now lucky to take down 1/2 a life bar. During this battle, I gained a great appreciation for 2 things: the boss fight time limit and the heart temple. Had it not been for those things, I might have never beaten the Chimera. To take down this behemoth, I came up with a strategy. I'd switch between Godzilla and Solomon. As one began to get dangerously low in health, I'd take him out of the heart and take him to the heart temple, while fighting the Chimera with the other. I should count my blessings that Chimera didn't regain lost health. A very interesting thing about Chimera was the colored sections on his body corresponded differently to his body parts. So each body part effectively had its own life meter. The head was invincible as long as the other parts were present, and would always be the last part to be destroyed. In addition to being difficult, it was also the longest fight by far. I tried to remember how many times I got taken out of the fight by the timer, but I lost count around 13. Eventually I destroyed all components but the head, which now flew on its own at an incredible speed. Chimera fought well, but I was extremely determined, and once he was reduced to a head, he no longer had the power to defeat Solomon, and I heat beamed him into an oblivion. And then the Chimera was no more. I was exhausted after that drawn-out fight and worried it might affect my performance in the end world chase level. The headquarters icon was replaced, but not by the Hellbeast face. Instead by a crucifix. I was completely stunned. I wasn't excited about seeing the Hellbeast icon, but if there was one good thing about those levels, it's that they were entirely predictable. I had a basic idea of what to expect. But now, here I was at the end, and the icon was completely different. What did it mean? And why a crucifix? It made me very uneasy. I attempted to start the level with Solomon, but I couldn't. I got this notice that simply stated, "Solomon cannot enter here." It didn't say why, but I think maybe it had to do with Solomon's demonic appearance. Since Solomon was out of the question, I went with Godzilla instead. Once the level started, the crucifix made sense. The level was a graveyard. I was still on edge, thinking that it was some kind of trick. The last level had involved running from the demonic beast, and I wasn't going to be fooled into thinking it was going to be any different. So I started out running, but after a few minutes, without interruption, I slowed down. It was during this time that the music caught my attention. I knew it sounded familiar when I first heard it, but it took a while for me to realize. It was an 8-bit rendition of Prayer for Peace from the original Godzilla film. A very sad, powerful song, even in the 8-bit form. At 2 minutes into the level, I encountered something. I wasn't sure how to react to it. My first instinct was to run, but this blue statuesque being simply floated in place, and I felt compelled just to stare at it for a time. Since this was a grave, and it was floating over the chapel, I guessed that it was some kind of angel watching over the deceased. It gave me a strange but warm feeling. I wouldn't say happy, but I felt that I was at peace somehow. And I had never seen this being before, yet it seemed very familiar to me. Just as I was going to leave, the Hellbeast appeared. Its presence warped the music into a terrifying, disorienting screeching, and transformed the level, desecrating the tombstones as new ground appeared, comprised of blood-soaked bodies. I could feel my heart now beating out of control. I had no chance to escape this monster. After all, it was too close. It lunged for the kill, but the angel got in its way. The demon roared and started clawing through the angel's leg. The tears of blood streamed from the angel's eyes. I wanted to save the angel, but there was nothing I could do. I had to honor its sacrifice and run. So I ran through the hellish landscape as fast as I could. The beast soon caught up with me, still swallowing the body of the angels, whose legs it had torn off. This sight made my terror change into anger. I now found myself hating this horrible monster. There was no doubt in my mind that it was pure evil, and it deserved to die. When I got to the end of the level, I remembered how it responded to my insult on trance. I spoke to it and said, "You're going to pay." This was its response. I had no idea how I'd follow up on that threat, and nothing could have prepared me for the horrors of the final world. Zenith.